Hello, in this project we are going to create an application which will change the color of the screen depending on the readings from the proximity sensor. So to start off, we'll start a new project with an empty activity. So for the application name, you can put anything, but I'm going to go with sensor application. Make sure you select your minimum API level and then click finish. Allow it some time to build the application with Gradle. Okay, so once it is done, go to activity main.xml. So this is where you can design your interface. So we are not going to change much. We'll change the font size and the text of this text box. You can either do it through the UI or go for text view and change the text here. Also, I'm going to change the font size. For that, you can go to just before the end of the tag and make some space and type Android text size, and you can pass around 100 and the unit should be SP. Okay, so now we'll check how this looks on the design view. Okay, perfect. And also one more thing, I'm going to make this background red and green so it will be reflected better if the text was white. So to do that, you can go to text and pass in Android text color and the text code for white is FFFFFF, and make sure you put the hashtag. Okay, so yeah, now it is not visible because the background is also white, but we'll be taking care of that soon. And also it is throwing a warning here, so we'll click on that. So it's asking to create a separate string.xml and use that as a resource. So we'll do that. Okay, so now we'll go to main.java. So one thing we need is we need permission to access the proximity sensor. So the permissions can be configured in Android manifest. So we open that file. So right before the application tag, make some space and type users feature Android name equals Android dot hardware dot sensor dot proximity. Okay, and also we should mention that this is required for the application to function, so that appropriate instructions will be provided for the user. So how you are going to do that is you can type Android require as to, and now you can close this tab. Okay, so the permissions are okay now. So we come to main activity. So here we need three things. First, we need something called sensor manager. So what sensor manager class does is it provides three things. One is it allows to get sensor instance, and also it allows us to access and list the sensors, and also register and unregister sensors or listeners. And also another thing we need is sensor class. What the sensor class does is it provides methods to get information of the sensor such as sensor name, sensor type, and sensor resolution, uh, and those kind of things. And also we need sensor event listener. So what that does is it provides us two functions. So one is to get the information when the sensor values change, or the other is to get the information when the sensor accuracy changes. So now we will define these three things. So since we are only using this one activity, we can declare all these private. When you get this pop-up, just click it and it will import the library automatically. We will import sensor event listener as well. We'll call it proximity sensor sensor listener. Okay, so the next thing we are going to do is come to this onCreate method. So now we can get this reference sensor manager and instantiate it with sensor services. Okay. Now, like I said earlier, the sensor class provides us facilities to get sensor information. So now we are going to use this reference and declare the sensor as a proximity sensor. How we are going to do that is here we pass the constant sensor dot type proximity. So like I said earlier, the sensor class already provides us with all the sensors. So one of the constants is that it provides is type proximity. So we can use that. The next thing we are going to do is check if the proximity sensor is available. So how we are going to do that is we can evaluate this proximity sensor variable. Now, if the proximity now if the proximity sensor is unavailable, this function will return null here. So we can evaluate that. So if that is null, I'm going to show a toast so that the user knows that the proximity sensor is not available. So we can use the toast class. Make text, and the context here is this. So we have to use this context. We don't need the dot here. And we have to pass in the message we want to show the user, which would be the proximity sensor is not available. Okay, and then we can decide how long we should show this part. Okay, and call the show function. Right. And then call finish. So it returns to the main activity. Okay. Now the next thing we have to do is we have to listen for the sensor. you use this proximity sensor listener. So we'll do that. You have to instantiate this one as well. Okay, so earlier I mentioned that the sensor event listener provides us two callback functions. Those are on sensor change and on accuracy change. So when the accuracy of the sensor change, it will fire this function. Otherwise, if the value of the sensor change, it will fire this function. So in this project, we are going to use this function. So inside this function, we already get the sensor event. So we can use this one to check if the expected behavior has occurred. So we can evaluate that as well with the if statement. So we use the sense event. So the sense event object provides us with values function. Now, if this sensor provided multiple values, we could it provides it in the form of an array. So if it provided us multiple values like a gyroscope value, now it we could go into first index, second index, and check what those values are. But the proximity sensor only allows us one value. So we have to get the first element in that array. So we get that. And now we check if it is less than the maximum range of the proximity sensor. So the proximity sensor is can be accessed through this variable. So we use that. And it allows the function to get maximum range. So we can use that directly. Now, if that is true, so we want to change our background color. So the color we want to change to is red. So get window, get deco view, set background color, and we can use the color class to provide a constant. Can just mention red. Make sure you import this color class as well. Okay, so uh, to explain this function a little bit more, so say the proximity sensor is only capable of detecting objects in a 1 centimeter range. So say that is the maximum range. So this would be 1. And sense event dot values the say it detected an object at 0.5 centimeters. So 0.5 centimeters would be less than 1, and this if statement would be true. Now say the object is 2 centimeters away, so object 2 centimeters away won't be even detected by the uh, sensor. So this value would be its default value. So that's what we are evaluating here. Okay, so now we should go for the else block. Now, if this statement is not satisfied, I want my background to be green color. So we can copy this line and paste it here and just change the color to green. Okay, so now that is done. We don't have to worry about this on accuracy change because we cannot get rid of that function because this is an interface, and when we use the interface, we must implement all its functions. So we will just leave it there. Now the next thing we have to do is once this activity is created, that is when the onCreate function is fired, we need to register this uh, proximity sensor listener. Sensor manager register listener, first our listener, and then we pass the proximity sensor. and then we pass the sampling period. So for this as well, we can use a constant, or you can put a direct value as an integer here as well. So you can do that by sensor manager dot sensor delay normal. Okay, now that is done. Now what we have to do is whenever this activity is paused, we need to unregister that listener. So how we can do that is we can just type unpause. Need to give the pop-up. So under here we can type uh, sensor manager dot unregister listener and the listener. Okay. Uh, now let's test out this application. Select the device you are going to emulate in and click this run button. So this will take some time. So now we get the application. So to test the proximity sensor, click these three dots, and from there you can go to virtual sensors and go to additional sensors. Now we can change the proximity by manipulating this slide bar. So once you increase it, you don't get a result. But as soon as you go below 1 centimeter, the color changes. So that's a quick demonstration on how to use the proximity sensor in Android Studio. Thank you.